Okay, picture this. You're trapped in a massive, blindingly bright cube. And you're not alone. You are shoulder to shoulder with 49 of the absolute loudest, most hyper-competitive internet personalities on the planet. I know exactly what that feels like because, well, I was literally one of them. Today, in this explainer, we're going to break down the anatomy of $1 million psychological experiment. 50 of the biggest streamers in the universe, locked in a box, and the last one to leave walks away with $1 million. And let me tell you, what started out as this fun, giant creator meetup, yeah, it morphed into a claustrophobic test of our sanity really, really fast.
That quote right there, it perfectly captures how fast the energy in that room completely tanked. When those doors first locked, there were a ton of nervous laughs, you know? We were hyping each other up, joking about twerking for survival, just kind of making light of the whole insane situation. But then the sheer reality hit. You have absolutely nothing to do except literally stare at the people trying to beat you. It was agonizing. The psychological tension set in way before we even played the first game. The jokes just kind of faded, and this heavy paranoia completely took over. And all those idealistic strategies we talked about, they fell apart almost immediately. In those first few hours, there were whispers of a Spanish alliance. People were actually walking around saying stuff like, yeah, it's the power of friendship, we got this. But honestly, when you're crammed in a confined space, just staring at a literal $1 million, the power of friendship has an incredibly short shelf life. We all woke up to the fact that 49 of us were guaranteed to lose. And from that moment on, things got cutthroat.
Which brings us to the first breaking point. Part 1, the paintball paranoia.
So Jimmy, MrBeast, pulls back a curtain to reveal this massive wall featuring a photo of every single one of us. We're handed paintball guns and told we have to shoot the photo of the streamer we hate the most. The 5 people whose targets got hit the most, eliminated instantly. The collective panic in that room was just palpable. Human logic literally evaporated. At first, no one wanted to pull the trigger. Sketch went up first and intentionally missed just to be the nice guy. But once that seal was broken, absolute pure chaos. People started shooting strictly for revenge. Like, if you aimed at me, I'm aiming at you. Then you had these wild accidents, like Pokimane aiming for the ground but accidentally hitting Arky's photo, which sparked an instant blood feud. Some players, like Marlon, literally shot their own photos just to defend their quote-unquote aura. And then, the most ruthless strategy of the whole game emerged. We started targeting players who already had points just to keep ourselves off the chopping block.
Guys, the sheer volume in that room was deafening. It all culminated in this fiery, explosive elimination for the first 5 people to go. I can literally still hear XQC screaming as he walked out, just shouting at everyone that they were going home. It was brutal, it was incredibly loud, and it instantly cemented the terrifying reality of the cube. No one was safe, and the eliminations were going to be absolutely merciless.
Okay, moving on to part 2, 10 minutes of sabotage, the Lambo challenge.
For the next phase of our confinement, a literal Lamborghini was driven right into the cube. 4 volunteers stepped up to play for it. And the rules? Simple, but totally cruel. You wear a blindfold, you place your hand on the car, and the person who takes their hand off closest to exactly 10 minutes wins the Lambo to give away to a viewer. But the other 3, they get eliminated from the $1 million run entirely. This is where the psychological warfare truly got weaponized. You had players like Sketch trying to rely entirely on their solo internal clock. But the rest of us in the crowd, we were ruthless. We were screaming fake numbers at him. 15 minutes, 30, 7 minutes, 2 minutes. It was totally impossible for him to focus, and he ended up pulling away at around the 5-minute mark. Now contrast that with Rabu and Andrea. They actually formed an external alliance. They used what gamers call comms. They literally had friends in the crowd checking the time codes on their vlog cameras and whispering the real time over to them. Because here's the thing about the cube, you cannot survive entirely alone. Thanks to this vital comms, Rabu and Andrea both pulled their hands off right at the 10-minute mark. When Jimmy went to the tape to check the exact timing, Rabu had taken his hand off just 5 frames, literally milliseconds, later than Andrea, which brought him closer to the exact 10-minute mark. He won the Lambo, and 3 highly competitive creators were instantly sent packing. All right, let's get into part 3, panic under pressure, sports versus gaming. So, Jimmy gave us a choice. Step into the sports zone or step into the video game zone. The catch? Only 10 people from each side would survive. That meant over half of the remaining room was about to be wiped out in one fell swoop. The panic was incredibly real, and it proved that no matter how good you are at your craft, the cube will make you crack.
On the sports side, we had to kick a soccer ball past IShowSpeed, who, if you know him, is notoriously obsessed with the sport. On the gaming side, a literal Fortnite battle royale. Now, we were all so sure the veterans would easily sweep this, but the sheer pressure induced these incredibly uncharacteristic, totally fatal mistakes from the best in the room.
Take Ludwig, for example. Before the soccer challenge even started, he was so hyped to see Speed that he jogged over to say hi. And in doing so, he stepped entirely out of the bounds of the cube. The one golden rule from the very first minute was, do not leave the cube. He was instantly eliminated on a technicality before he even got a chance to kick the ball. It was just this tragic, mind-boggling mistake, born entirely out of the surreal, hyper-stimulating environment we were all trapped in.
And the irony on the gaming side was just as brutal. You had Tfue, an absolute legend, a top-tier Fortnite professional. I mean, we all thought he was a lock. But as the in-game storms started creeping in and shrinking the map, the raw panic of those million-dollar stakes totally took over. Everyone was frantically hiding or fighting, and ultimately, a seasoned pro got eliminated in his own game. The cube literally takes your expertise and throws it right out the window.
Which leads us to part 4. The fragility of trust, the memory game. So that brings us to the top 20. We were forced to split up into teams of 4, and I cannot overstate how exhausting it is to suddenly have your entire fate tied to 3 other highly stressed, sleep-deprived competitors. This was the memory game, and it was designed specifically to break whatever lingering trust we had left in that room. Here's how this nightmare worked. First, shapes like stars, diamonds, and squares flash on this massive LED floor for exactly 10 seconds. Second, the floor goes pitch black. Third, Jimmy spins a wheel, assigns your team a shape, and you have to blindly walk to where you think that shape was and stand perfectly inside of it. If you step outside the lines, your team loses points. And the 2 lowest scoring teams? Eliminated. So I gotta ask you, who do you trust when $1 million is on the line? Because imagine standing in the pitch dark, trying to hold a mental image of a triangle in your head, while the rival teams all around you are deliberately screaming fake shapes and fake directions. Diamond, diamond, move your left foot, you're out. It was absolute psychological warfare. Teamwork, when you put it under $1 million microscope, is just incredibly fragile.
It is honestly terrifying how fast we turned on each other. Tyler's team is a perfect example. They were assigned the square. In the dark, Tyler very confidently claimed he had the dead center. Well, when the floor lit up, they were completely misaligned, scoring a terrible 2 points. Instantly, and I mean instantly, the alliance dissolved. They started pointing fingers right there on the floor, arguing about whose toes were actually in the middle. Because when the stakes are this high, nobody wants to take the blame for losing.
Even the strongest bonds totally broke down here. Remember Rebu, the French streamer who brilliantly orchestrated the comms to win the Lamborghini just a few hours prior? Well, his entire French team, who we all considered one of the absolute strongest alliances in the cube, failed the memory test. A single, collective memory lapse in the dark sent all 4 of them packing in a brutal tiebreaker. Just like that, the heroes of the previous challenge were gone.
Experiencing all of this firsthand leaves you with a pretty chilling realization about human nature when it's put under a microscope. So, I'll leave you with this to chew on. Knowing the pure paranoia of the paintball game, the cutthroat sabotage of the blindfold challenge, and the insanely fragile trust of the memory game, how long do you think your friendships would last inside the cube? Would your moral compass survive, or would the psychological breakdown claim you too? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.